Hi guys, this is Janet. I have Christopher Flores with me. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. So tell me a
Thanks for
little bit
having me.
about yourself.
A little bit about myself. I was an athletic trainer I'm still an athletic trainer for 10 years at a high school. Worked at a high school with 29 varsity sports, so a ton of athletes and so a ton of injuries. And now I work on my own at a gym called Flow Fitness, where I do athletic training stuff, but strength and conditioning stuff and fit in that fitness realm, as well as I've wrote a book, so I'm an author as well now. Promote myself here, and a dad of two kids, which is my main role now, a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old.
Tell me a little bit about the book.
Well, the book was inspired by my children, actually. It was one of the things where when I had my first son, I wanted to give them some kind of rules and morals and principles to live by. So it was written in the light of giving them a step-by-step of how we want you to represent our family, hence the title, Build Your Legacy, how we want our legacy to live on as a family. And so once it was originally not supposed to be published, it was just for my children. And then a couple friends read it and loved it. And so now it's on Amazon now, available to purchase. But a lot of people have gotten some great feedback, even people without children, just kids come out of college. Like, how do you want your legacy to live on? I think it's important not only in life, but think about your career as an athletic trainer. What do you want those students to say once they're gone? Like, what do you want to represent as the ATC for that institution you're working for? So again, morals, values, and principles, those transcend career, they transcend profession. Those are things that are with you all the time. So that's what the book is based on.
Using those lessons in your book, what would you tell a brand new certified athletic trainer?
That is a good question. Brand new certifieds, I think one of the things that I even as I was a preceptor for 3 different colleges, and one of the things I always tell kids is focus on the process. I think too many athletic trainers now, especially, are so focused on end results. Yes, you want a kid to return to play. Yes, you want the kids to be on the field, but there's a process that happens through injury. And I think if you can work the process and trust the process, the result will take care of itself. If every day you show up and you do your job right and you trust your intuition, I think sometimes we focus too much on the protocol, and the answer's right in front of us. And we're so married to the protocol that we forget that to pay attention to the child or athlete or person in front of us. So I feel like if they can learn to focus on the process and not be so results based all the time, I think they'll have a better, I guess, not understanding of the career, but they'll just have a better career because they'll know that they did the right thing at the right moment, as opposed to be focused 20 steps ahead of where they're at right now.
So moving on to current events, what are your thoughts on feelings on what's going on in the world and in the US right now?
I would say the thing I was most shocked about Wednesday's events of storming the Capitol, I think one of the things I was most shocked about was the success. I think we have this vision in our mind that, like, you hit a button and all the windows shut down and the government was like clad and you can't get in, right? We have these ideas when you watch in movies, and to see it wasn't a large group of people. Like, in all measures, that wasn't a lot of people that stormed. It was a lot for that moment, but in actuality, there've been bigger marches, there've been bigger protests, and that was not a lot of people to be so successful. So I think for me, that was the most nerve-wracking thing, to see how defenseless we were. But as far as my own personal feelings of the events, I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. I think we've been dealing with a lot this last couple of years. We've been dealing with a lot of racist undertones with a lot of stuff. And I think for some people in America, this is the first time they're seeing racism and things at that level. For some of us, depending on what neighborhood you grew up in and what area you grew up in, you've seen this already. You've seen this play out. You've seen it happen to, if not your own personal experience, you've seen it happen to friends. You've seen privilege on small stages, and now you're seeing on large stages. So for me, I just feel like I'm not shocked that it happened, but I do feel that people need to really, and one of the things I've been going through with quarantine is just really focus on your family and those that matter, and control the controllables. There's things that are beyond your control. You can use your voice to the best of its ability, but you're not going to change the mind of the president of the United States or government, just you by yourself, right? So control your family and the people around you, and hug them close, man, because you never know what may or may not happen.
With these current events and everything on TV and quarantine, we have a lot of time to kind of introspectively look at ourselves. Were there any implicit biases or any of that sort of thing that you had to confront or think about or rethink?
Um, this is gonna sound like a bad answer, but I don't really know if I had specific biases that I had to confront, because not much of my life changed during quarantine. Not to say I didn't have time to reflect, but my life actually, again, having a child during the quarantine made it so you're really just focused on raising your kid and being able to spend that time. So I didn't really have any biases. I feel like I had to address. I want the one thing I think that stood out the most to me was to be cautious about placing judgment on other people, especially what you see happening, because in that placing that judgment, you almost become the thing that you're arguing about. So you almost become as ignorant as the person you're talking about when you say certain things, especially in front of certain people. So that's the one thing I think I noticed most, is to be very cautious of choosing my words, especially on social media, not reacting via just emotion and just spewing stuff out there. Because if you're spewing hate to fight hate, then you're never going to win. I don't think fear or fighting creates lasting peace. So I think you just have to take a step back and like think about things, and really put them through a filter before you start tossing them out there.
Just before we started recording, we were talking amongst ourselves about being the only minority and how we sometimes have to be the representative of our culture or race. How have you dealt with that?
Well, it was interesting when I first became an athletic trainer, because the school I was working at was an affluent school. There's a lot of children with money there. There wasn't as many minorities. So I felt like my office almost became that safe haven for the Black and Spanish kids to have someone they can kind of relate to. So it was very interesting to see what their struggles were in that area. And you have to be cautious on if you're I don't want to say you have to, but I know for me, I was very cautious on the things I said and how I came across. I wanted to be myself 100% and authentic and real, but at the same time, you almost become a chameleon, where you go into one neighborhood, you know how to react and speak, and you go into another one, you know how to react and speak. And I think that's one of the gifts, though, of being an athletic trainer, especially at a high school level, where, let's say, for example, an athlete gets hurt, you have to speak three different languages. You have to be able to speak to the parents, you have to be able to speak to the kids to put it in their terms, and you have to translate that information to doctors and everyone else. So I think as athletic trainers, we already have the ability to speak different lingos and speak different languages to mold to our whoever we're dealing with. So I think for me, being a representative of a Puerto Rican male from the South Bronx and being in the affluent town, New Jersey, I already knew how to navigate and not be too much on one end or the other.
You mentioned working in a high school before. I'm sure there were times where burnout came into existence or strong. How did you deal with that burnout, and what do you think caused it?
I quit my job. But it wasn't because of that. But I did start feeling a lot of anxiety and burnout. It was my own doing, to be honest. I mean, the job itself was stressful and was tough. But I had 6 jobs at the time because I was trying to juggle too many things at once. So one of the things that really helped me with the burnout, though, was to schedule my day and become really diligent about writing out what I wanted to accomplish that day, and also plan out the entire week. I think what happens is, especially as athletic trainers, it's such a reactive position or job. So obviously injury happens, you sprint out there, and all of a sudden, let's say you had 10 things planned, all that goes out the window because you got to deal with that concussion or ACL, tear on the field at that moment. So one of the things I became very diligent of is planning out my day. So what I was going to get done in the morning, before work, what I would get done after work, what I need to get done during that day specifically, and made sure I had that stuff planned out. So not everything was reactive. Obviously when you're on the field and something happens, you have to be in that moment. But outside of that, what can I control? What can I plan out so that I'm not always just reacting to everything all day long? So I think that's what was a catalyst to my burnout, was not planning. And once I started to feel anxious and that burnout come on, I had to take a step back and plan things out. I think the other thing that also was that you have to realize is that no matter what you do as an ATC, injuries and stuff are going to happen. You can't prevent everything. And my own, I was trying to do a lot like, I could stop this from happening. And I know why this is going on. And why aren't the coaches listening to me? And why don't these kids just stretch more or do more mobility work? And I had all these ideas and it's like they weren't listening. And I was like, it got to a point where you had to recognize that you can only do so much and you can only give to the extent which you have to give, and everything outside of that is beyond your control.
So moving into the private sector, how much of that athletic training skills translated?
Everything, to be honest with you, especially in fitness. I think, well, I had done fitness before athletic training too, so I had worked in the fitness industry for already almost 10 years before I started in AT. All through college I was working as a trainer as well. So I think one of the things we lose sight of in athletic training is that the body's the body, movement is movement. It doesn't matter what you're doing. So the things you learn in athletic training to help prevent injury and to protect our athletes, you learn almost the opposite side of the spectrum in fitness. You learn how to move it and do all these things and try to get stronger, faster, and all that. So I think the two professions are actually well meshed together. It's a perfect marriage if you really pay attention to how the human body works. So I think once I stepped out of working in the school sector and just working on my own, I was able to see movement from a whole different mindset or perspective, and able to almost like see the injury way before it happened and trace backwards to what may be causing this thing. So I think the skills of athletic training help tremendously.
So looking at athletic training in the next couple of years, what do you think the biggest issues the profession's going to face?
I think technology is one of those things where there's a lot of what athletic training is to me anyway. I can't speak for everyone. It's being able to be in that moment and almost create all these variables in your head. Like you see so much happening at once. Like it's not just, you learn in school kind of valgus varus stress test and you learn all these like black and white. And then when you get in the field, it's like, was it raining that day? Was the athlete under a lot of emotional stress? What was their mental state like? What was the pressure of the game like? What's going on with the parents? What the parents' reaction to this kid? What's the coach? Like you have all these things that you compute in your head. And I feel like with technology, there's no way to duplicate what we do as a skill set. So for us to be doing, virtual athletic training and trying to assess via computer, you lose a lot. And you gain on some ends because you can be more places at once. But I think you also lose a lot. So I think that's one of the things we're going to face is how do you assess without actually physically putting your hands on the athlete? Because there's things you feel, like our sense of touch is very important. You may feel something's off with an athlete when you do an assessment. When you're watching them on the screen, there's certain limitations you have. So I think that's going to be a big hurdle to overcome. And it's going to be hard to replace that skill set of being in person.
So next couple minutes for you, your closing statement.
My closing statements, first go buy the book. Hate to be a salesman. But no, I think it's great for athletic trainers to start understanding what they want their legacy to be in the athletic training room. One of the things I've been telling people, and this kind of goes outside of athletic training, but could also be something that athletic trainers can relate to, is due to like COVID and all the things that are going on and people passing away that, you never thought, would have. I think it's important as athletic trainers that we give people the flowers while they can still smell them. I think it's important we tell people how we feel about them. If you had a mentor in college that helped you, a mentor in high school, someone who guided you to become an athletic trainer, someone you work with, a coach or a higher up or manager or somebody who's in charge that really does a great job, buy them something, tell them, hey, man, you're doing awesome. Because I think a lot of times the higher ups or the people who've helped us, we just assume they understand how we feel about them, and they may not. Like in my book, I write a lot about one of my athletic trainers who was one of my biggest mentors, and she guided me and made me almost become an athletic trainer through her mentorship and guidance. So I think it's important we really do tell people how we feel about them at the moment, and we don't wait.
Thank you, Christopher, so much for your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.